You're welcome. Okay, so we are back, like the song said, for another great video. We are on chapter 14. So, can y'all believe we only have 5 more chapters left? That is crazy to me. And that next week we'll be done with the book. So crazy. Okay, so remember in chapter 13 we left off and they were talking to Abner, who's the old man who picked them up, the old Scottish man, who picked up Samuel and Annie. Remember, Annie is the little girl with the house, the burn, and hopefully y'all have watched all the videos up until this point and know who all I'm talking about. So, we are currently in Abner's wagon, remember, and Abner had just asked them to tell him the story about everything that had happened to them. So, about Samuel's house and his family, and about Annie's house and her family. So, the end of chapter 13 stopped with them. It said, and to Samuel's complete surprise, Abner took a deep breath and listened. So, we are starting chapter 14. Oh, I almost forgot to do the questions. Okay, so chapter 14. Why'd y'all almost let me forget to do the questions? Every time. It's y'all's fault, not mine. Chapter 14. All right, there are only 4 questions for today. So that's easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Question number 1. It says, what did Abner say about the battle at Brooklyn Heights? So that's something you need to be listening for, is Brooklyn Heights. What did Abner say about the battle at Brooklyn Heights? Number 2, what was the pass Abner had and how did he get it? Number 3, what did Abner say about the Hessians? And number 4, what were Abner's 2 reasons for helping them? So this chapter isn't too long. So sit back, relax, and listen. And as always, we will review those questions at the end of the chapter once I get done reading it. And be sure to listen till the end for the shenanigans shoutouts. All right. Chapter 14. Abner sat silent for a long time after Samuel had finished telling the story of the attack and the raid, although he was less bloody in his telling than he might have been, because again Annie was listening and he didn't want to scare her. At length, Abner coughed and spit tobacco juice between the mules. So you're thinking your folks are in New York, Samuel? It's a guess. From what I understand, Philadelphia is in American hands still, and I don't think the British would take them there. Caleb heard them talking about going to New York whenever they were over near their house. And once you're in New York, you're going to find them somehow, and then with your little shooter, you're going to lope them in there and shoot your way out? Well, no, I don't know, Samuel said. Right in the middle of the whole British army, you're going to sneak in and take them clean away. Well, when you put it that way, I guess, Samuel hesitated. I heard they had 14,000 troops for the battle to take Brooklyn Heights alone. The Continentals never had a chance. Started running before the fight even started. They probably got 25,000 troops swarming all over the area. And you're just going to jump right in the middle of them? It'd be like climbing into a swarm of bees. Look, I don't have a plan just yet. All I know is to follow them as best as I can and then work on something if I find them, when I find them. You know what I think? Abner looked at him. No, sir. You don't have to call me sir. Yes, sir. No. Ugh. I don't know what you think. I think you need help from an old coot and a couple of dogs. That's what I think. You do that? Couldn't that land you in a lot of trouble? You've got that pass, and that lets you go places. Why would you want to help us and risk losing the pass? Abner snorted. Ain't no pass at all. Got a friend in Philadelphia with a printing press, and I had him make a peck of forms with the date blank and a place for somebody to sign. Official looking, isn't it? I just fill in the blank with the right general's name and sign it, and it works every time. Well, that still doesn't answer the question about helping us. Samuel watched as the dogs moved to the front of the mules, one on either side, looked ahead intently, then dropped back. Somebody's coming, Annie said. She'd seen the dogs move. Shouldn't we stop? Not soldiers, Abner said, shrugging and spitting. Just people traveling, maybe getting out of New York. Was it soldiers, the dog would have stayed up front, kept watching. How do they know? Abner shook his head. No way to know that unless you're a dog. They kind of feel things, in the air or maybe along the ground. Sometimes they'll put their noses down and tell it that way, but they've always been right so far. And they were right this time, too. A freight wagon was coming, not as full as Abner's, and pulled by a team of oxen rather than mules. There was a man walking on one side of the oxen, carrying a wooden staff which he used to guide them, and a woman walking on the other side. On the wagon seat were two children, probably about 3 and 4 years old. They passed head on, and Samuel thought neither of them would say anything. The man just nodded at Abner, but before he was well past, Abner called, "Dragoons ahead, patrolling the west." "Thank you," the man said with a nod. "We're obliged for the knowledge, but we're going south at the turn. Head down for Philadelphia if it ain't still held." "Held solid. Good journey," Abner said. "For you and the family and good health." "Same to you." And they were gone. Why don't the British soldiers come at them? Do they have a pass too? Probably not, but I doubt anybody really gets a pass like mine. But the soldiers aren't always a problem. Sometimes they take things, act up rough, but other times they seem to follow the same kind of rules we do. Unless they're Hessians. Then even the pass might not work. He shook his head. There ain't nothing good about Hessians. They were even born bad. Annie nodded. She'd been so quiet that Samuel almost forgot she was there, sitting between them. Her voice was so brittle, like it could break in the middle of a word. They're all bad. It'll be years, Samuel thought, before she can forget. Maybe her whole life, and I don't blame her. I feel the same, and I didn't see my parents die. The thought of his parents brought back the memory of the questions he had asked Abner, which had not yet been answered. "We never heard why you wanted to help us," he said. "Couldn't it make trouble for you?" "No more trouble than I make for myself," Abner answered. "Still, you're pushing at this, ain't you?" Abner answered. He smiled. Though in the hair and spit stains it was hard to tell. "Kind of like a root hog, digging at it. I want to know because it doesn't make sense. You don't know anything about us, but you'd risk trouble just to help us? You've got to admit it seems strange. I mean, I'm grateful, mighty grateful, but... Well, thinking on it, there's 2 reasons." "We're listening," Annie and Samuel said. "First, when you get old and start to smell an end to things, your brain starts doing things on its own, whether you like it or not. You might be looking at a piece of meat cooking on a fire, hungry and ready to eat, or sitting up here alone watching the mules pull on a lazy Sunday afternoon, and your brain starts in adding and subtracting, measuring your life." "What do you mean?" Annie looked up at him confused. "Well, it says you've done this many things wrong and this many things right. Kind of like a ledger with lines down the middle. Maybe you helped somebody load a wagon once, and that would go on the good side. And then maybe you ate a piece of pie that somebody else wanted, that somebody else probably deserved more than you did. Now that would go on the bad side." "Well, we all do that, don't we?" Samuel asked. "Think about things and then try to do the right one." "We can hope so, but until you get old, you don't really start adding them up. When you're young, you forget some of the things, both good and bad. But when you get old, it's amazing how much you can remember. I keep pulling up parts of my life from when I was barely off the milk, bawling after my mom in Scotland. I stole a tiny piece of bread when I wasn't supposed to eat on the ship on the way over here, and that's in there, waiting to be added in. Oh, waiting to be added in. Even though I puked it up not 2 minutes later after I ate it." He snorted and spit, this time almost to the noses of the mules. "I wasn't one for sailing. The boat rocked once, and the first time I got on it, I was sick all the way across." Now he's talking about coming from Scotland over to the United States. He stopped the wagon because they met some young men on foot, obviously fleeing. There were 3 of them, and one had bandages around his upper left arm. They waved but kept moving west along the trail at a trot. Abner warned the men about the cavalry, and they nodded. Samuel thought they should be moving off to the side of the trail into the brush, but didn't say anything. They probably knew more than he did since they'd been fighting. He was very glad that he and Annie had run into Abner, but knew that if they hadn't, they would have traveled as much as possible in the thick brush. In the woods was life. Out here in the open, now that was a different story. You said 2, Samuel said, watching the men until they were out of sight. If the cavalry were coming back, they would be caught and probably killed. It all seemed so crazy. Men walking down a road, somebody coming along and killing them. That's just too much for him to comprehend. Samuel continued, 2 reasons to help us, and you only said 1, so what's the other one? Well, the first one was almost rubbish. I mean, it's true, but maybe a little bit too flowery to be real. I like the way it sounds, though, almost like it might be written somewhere. Abner chuckled. Being alone most of the time, I don't get much of a chance to flower things up. Maybe I should write it down. Maybe somebody might read it someday and think I was more than I really am. Lord, Samuel thought, for somebody who spends most of his time alone, he sure does like to hear his own voice. He waited. But the second reason is quick. The truth is that I'm too old to fight. Abner laughed. Annie jumped, and Samuel realized she'd been dozing. I like a good scrap, and I'm too old for this one. So I go back and forth with news, to try and help. So you're a spy? Samuel asked. No, that's too hard of a word. Though I expect these redcoats would probably hang me proper if they knew. I go back and forth with news about things that are happening, and some might be interested in hearing about it. I sell a little and buy a little and carry a word now and then. And I help them that needs it when I can. I can't really fight, my bones would break, but if I can help those who are against the redcoats, it's still right close to fighting in my book. I can't stand the redcoats, and you don't like them either. Is that a good enough reason for you? Samuel nodded, watching the dogs move up the trail and back again. That's a good enough reason for me, and thank you for all the help. So that is the end of chapter 14. We'll review over these questions real quick. The first question said, what did Abner say about the battle at Brooklyn Heights? So be sure you go back and listen for that. That was towards the beginning. Number 2, what was the pass that Abner had and how did he get it? So be sure to tell what the pass was for and why it was important, and then also tell how did he get it. Number 3, what did Abner say about the Hessians? And number 4, what were Abner's 2 reasons for helping them? Be sure that you include both reasons and explain them both. Since there's only 4 questions today, it shouldn't be hard to make sure that all of them are in complete sentences and make sure that you answer the questions all the way through. Let's see here. Okay, for today's shenanigans shout-outs, those are my spirit fingers in case you're wondering. From Miss Savage's class, my shout out goes to Mackay Williams. He has been making sure he gets all of his work done and has been working so super hard. So shout out to you, Mackay. I'm super, super proud of you. From my class, from Miss Shelton's class, the shout out goes to Anaya Johnson. She has also been working super, super hard, making sure she gets all of that work done on time and really keeping an open line of communication with me. So I love how she's been asking questions. So be sure if you have questions, you let me know because I'm happy to help. I just don't know if you need help if you don't ask. And then from Mr. Baker's class, my shout out goes to LaJavian Jones. He has gotten on every single meeting, I'm pretty sure, whether it's 9 o'clock, 1 o'clock, he has gotten all of his work done and he has worked super, super hard. So I'm super proud of you, LaJavian. Be sure to show your mom this so that she can be proud of you too. If you have not gotten a shout out, do not get discouraged, do not get sad. Just keep working super, super hard, and I promise you that I will shout you out before this book is done. Also make sure that even after we finish the book next Friday that you have subscribed and hit that notification bell because I'm going to continue to read different books throughout the summer. So like I said in one of my other videos, it'd be super awesome if you were to wake up each morning and start your day with a quick read aloud with me. And that would be a way that we could still keep in touch even after you go on in the summertime. So be sure you like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any great videos. If you need anything, just know that I'm a phone call away. And never forget I love you.